I usually say, because we have as our guest and we have some politicians sitting there, but if you'll notice over there, there's no politician sitting across from me. There could have been Chuy Garcia, who we invited about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Actually, we were down at his campaign 10 minutes before we were ready to, his campaign office, we were ready to do it right there. They said, family emergency, can't do it. So, but Chuy, we've invited back. We're fine. We don't hold grudges. Chuy, come on back, because you say you need some earned media. Right there. You could have had a half an hour today. Or we were scheduled up until last night to have Bob Fioretti, and he was going to be there. But last night, I guess something came up. I don't know, he decided, even though Bob's done the show before, look, it's a casual discussion. That's what we're going to have here today. We're going to talk about the mayor's race. We would have liked to have some of the candidates here, any one of them. Garcia, Chuy Garcia, Cook County Commissioner, Alderman Bob Fioretti. Okay. But couldn't. We'd like to have the mayor here, Rahm Emanuel. I mean, he was here twice at Public Affairs in 2002 when he was running for Congress, and then when he was a congressman. You can see one of those shows if you go to youtube.com/publicaffairs.tv and look around on our YouTube channel. You can see Rahm 12 years ago. How different was he then from where he is now? So I'm not sure why people are reluctant to take advantage of this good offer. But not to worry, because if you're sitting out there in Chicago and you haven't been paying too much attention to the mayoral election race, that election contest is scheduled for February 24th. If somebody of the at least five major candidates, might be one or two others, if somebody like Rahm gets 50% or more, well, then it's over. If not, then we go to a runoff between the top two on April 7th, 2015. And so you might be thinking, well, gee, Jeff, I don't even really know who's running, and I'm going to a cocktail party, and this is what our show does. If you're going to go to a cocktail party and you don't know anything about the mayoral election, just tune into Public Affairs and we'll keep you informed. So we'll just run through. Let's see if we can get that graphic up now to show the 5 candidates for mayor in the city of Chicago. Of course, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who's looking for re-election. He's been there almost 4 years now. He was elected in 2011. Alderman Bob Fioretti, who's a second ward alderman, and Commissioner Jesus Chuy Garcia, pretty much goes by Chuy, C-H-U-Y. Businessman Willie Wilson, and activist, I'm not sure what else to say about Doc Walz, who's run before. That's it. So those are the 5. Now, well, we'll talk a little bit about each of the candidates, and then we'll talk the issues. Watching a speech by Chuy Garcia at the City Club. We're taping this on January 22nd, 2015. And I was watching a speech by Chuy, and one of the mainstream media guys said to me, he leaned over and said, Jeff, when's the last time this guy ever made a major decision? I was thinking, like, if Chuy were here, okay, we were talking about Bob before, if Chuy were here, people might want to say, well, what is it they should know about Chuy? And Chuy, I'm sure, would tell them that he was involved in the Harold Washington administration. While that was going on, he ran for alderman. He was a young man then. That was 30 years ago. Remember back when the Bears won the Super Bowl, way back, 30 years ago, 85? Yep, that's about the time of the Harold Washington administration for Chuy, and then he became an alderman, then he became a state senator, then he became a Cook County commissioner, and he did a so-called a lot of activist stuff he said for the community. What has he done lately? That'll question, what have you done for me lately? So maybe if you're thinking of voting for, put that graphic up again of those 5 candidates, Rahm Emanuel, Alderman Fioretti, Cook County Commissioner Chuy Garcia, businessman Willie Wilson, activist Doc Walz. Chuy, what have you done for the people of Chicago lately? What would you do now? How would you stop murder, Chuy? How would you stop West Side rape? West Side, because a lot of that stuff is happening there. We're not racist here. We're not saying there are lots of good things that happen on the West Side and in Inglewood, but there are a lot of bad things. And more bad things happen there, West Side, South Side, than the North Side. Or downtown, where these guys, the critics of Rahm, call it the shiny city, because down in the neighborhoods it's not so good. So Chuy, what would you do? Well, I don't know. He would say restorative justice. Restorative justice. What does that mean? Are you going to vote for Chuy because he said restorative justice? Because I don't quite know what it means. He says it means bringing the victim and the perp together. Okay. Wow. Yeah, you're going to fix murder by doing that? That's interesting. What are you going to do to stop rape? I mean, you're for women's rights. You don't think any woman should be raped, shouldn't have. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to get more cops. Well, you are. Okay. And how are you going to pay for that? And do you think more cops will do it? Because we have more cops per person in Chicago than they have in New York, and New York has a lower murder rate. Why would that be? Maybe more cops is not the answer. Maybe it's not the complete answer. Community policing, Chewy says. Oh, and I think Alderman Fioretti would say community policing too. So would Rom. We're all for community policing. Really, are we? Now, how do we do that? And how do we get the superintendent of police to do it? And how do we change a whole culture? I mean, that's why we'd have a casual conversation here, Chewy. But we were going to ask Chewy that when he was going to appear, but he's not there, so we can't ask him. We were going to ask Bob Fioretti. We've kind of ignored Willie Wilson, and that's our fault because Willie's new, came into the race relatively late, and we just contacted him today. We're talking about having him on the show. We hope Willie Wilson will be here for the next show, okay? So keep looking, but right now Willie gets a pass because my bad. I haven't really pushed him to be on the show. Activist Doc Walls, well, we had Doc on before. He is sort of a habitual candidate. There's Doc, who just runs and he gets maybe 3 to 5% of the vote. He'll never get much more. Everybody knows that. Doc knows that. I knew that. So we're not going to bother with Doc. He gets a pass. He wants to be out there talking. Probably shouldn't be in the debates. Yeah, Doc, I don't mean to upset you, but unless you're a serious candidate, unless you can show, you're likely to be competitive, this is important stuff. We need to focus on the people who might win. And really, I don't know if anybody has a chance other than Rom. We'll come to that. But if they do, that would be Fioretti, that would be Chuy Garcia, and possibly Willie Wilson. Okay. So, what would they do? We community policing, I don't know, more cops, redeployment, that might be good. Why don't you take the cops from the areas that are safer, some, not all, and put them in the areas where crime is worse? I don't know. Have I heard Chuy say that? I don't really. It might upset the people who are going to lose it, so they're not going to. You see, politicians, they don't like to say things that pin them down. So I was talking to Alderman Fioretti's campaign when he was on the show. I said, let's make this a really good show. See what a nice guy I am. I don't look for gotcha questions. I was saying, let's make this a really good show. I was saying to his young assistant, Aaron, or Tony, let's make it a really good, high-impact show. Meaning, don't just come on and blab things that you've said before. Let's make some news. Like, why don't you, say what the crime rate was for murder, say whether it's not gone down, and say what it would be and how you think it would be different, Alderman Fioretti, if you were mayor. Specifically, 3 things you would do. 1, 2, 3. Don't just talk about more jobs. You see, when you think about more jobs, do you remember about a month ago, there was a 16-year-old kid. It's a really sad story. Perfect kid, in the inner city, in Chicago. He doesn't do gangs. He's got a twin brother. They're just perfect. Their mom never lets them out of the sight. Parental involvement. He gets a little older. She says, okay, you can go off on your own. He does. He's doing nothing wrong. Some 16-year-old guy sees this 16-year-old and says, I want his jacket. And so he starts pounding away, and he ends up killing him for his jacket. For his jacket. Okay? So what is the issue here? Somebody would say, Chuy would say, like, okay, more jobs. Fioretti would say more jobs. But I think the kid who did the killing, he had a job at McDonald's part-time. I'm not saying more jobs wouldn't be useful for young kids who would learn the value of work and responsibility and involve them in the system and honesty. All fine. But it's not the complete answer. I would hope Chuy and Bob Fioretti and Rom would start talking about values. How do we change values so 16-year-old kids who are in those situations never want to kill for a jacket? They should never want to kill, but especially not for a jacket. I don't hear much about values. It's a long-run solution, long-term, and so they can't do it. And so, Bob Fioretti, have you ever talked about values and changing values? Have you ever talked about the role of faith-based institutions? Have you ever talked about the role of churches in doing this? Because churches can do some good. I know for the liberal Democrats it's not so good to mix, church and government, church and state, but sometimes maybe you cannot mix it, but produce good results. Just a thought. Okay. This time is just going by so fast, even without these guys. It's like I've got 3 guests. I've got Ram here, I've got Bob Fioretti, I've got Chuy Garcia, I got Willie Wilson. It's like I got 4 guests, okay? And I got to keep thinking of evolving this. This is way easier if I just ask the questions. You guys who didn't show up, Ram, oh yeah, we asked Ram, and Steve Mabry, good guy, because he did say he's packed schedule, but he would try to work him in. I don't think they're really trying for Chuy. Ram has got like $12 million to spend on paid media. He really doesn't need me. He really doesn't. I mean, and he's a good guy because he didn't meet me in 2002 and he came on. I'm not favoring one or the other, but I do have to point out that Rahm Emanuel, who didn't really need me in 2002, did show up. I give him credit. He wanted to talk to you folks, my viewers. Not about me, it's about you. Even though he could talk to you in paid ads, he didn't stay away. Chuy, so far away. Fioretti, we're here once. So going back to, I was talking to the Fioretti campaign about, they could get specific, but they just don't want to. Jumping over to education, I said, 25% of the black kids read at grade level. 25% of the 4th grade black kids in CPS, Chicago Public Schools, read at grade level. Hispanics a little higher, maybe 28%. It's terrible. It's a terrible statistic. So I said to the campaign guy, well, maybe he should talk about could he make it to 50%. That's still not good. It means 1 out of every 2 kids in the CPS, if you did that, if you got it from 25% to 50%, 1 out of every 2 did not read at grade level. Not good. But it's better. That would be improvement. What did they say? Well, we don't want to get specific because we don't know if we can promise that. Like, what? Okay, let's just go. This is how we're sort of trying to be effective here, working with our charts. Let's go to that graphic. We'll go to that graphic now that shows you my prediction for the race. Basically, if the election were held today on January 22nd, how would it turn out on February 24th? Okay, about a month away, 32 days. And I'm guessing Rahm Emanuel, as you see up here, this is my guess. I'm not favoring Rahm, I'm just trying to be objective here. Rahm would be at 54%, as you can see, Chuy at 27%, Willie Wilson at 10%, Fioretti at 6%, Doc Walls at 3%. Now, they'll tell you, oh, that's what Rahm is putting out. Well, that happens to be probably the conventional wisdom. It may not be right. We'll see. Things can change. Okay? I mean, Fioretti says he's telling me, oh, okay, those background guys, Freddie and Garcia and all those guys who don't want to be on the record, I can just tell you what people are saying. They haven't really said this thing off or on the record, but they're saying, these guys are sort of saying, we're in there. No, Rahm's in the 30s, and we're close in the teens, and if we get to be number 2, we'll be wrong. Really? Bob, you think you're in the teens, 18%, 20%? Because if you do, you still got ground to make up. Why wouldn't you come here and say, okay, 25% of the kids are reading at grade level, and Balderman, what were they doing 4 years ago? 25%. Hasn't moved at all. Hasn't moved at all in about 15 years. Don't you think you should be telling people? It's not my job. It's Fioretti's job, right? It's Chuy's job. It's Rahm's job. They're running for mayor. It's Willie Wilson's job. So I have to do that. And then I have to say, well, could you give them some hope that you could knock it up from 25 to 30 to 35% to 40? My gosh, even 50? And what would you do? Oh, you're against charter schools? Okay. As Mayor Daley used to say, what trees would you plant, Alderman Fioretti? So you don't like charter schools? You don't like closings? The schools are inefficient. They're underutilized. They're not performing. Don't close those schools. Oh, no. It'll be unsafe. Remember that stuff about safe passage? Did you ever hear, after they closed the schools, of one incident attributed to the closing of the schools where the kids were hurt when they went from a closed school to an open school? I didn't hear one. I didn't hear one. And the media, so they would jump on it. So Bob, okay, you're not going to do charter schools. You're not going to do school vouchers. What are you going to do? I don't know. He's not here. We don't know. Chuy, what are you going to do? You don't like charter schools? Because I'll tell you, Chuy, you say you identify with the Hispanic community. All the polls show charter schools are really, really popular with minorities, with blacks, and with Hispanics. They want those opportunities to opt out of the failing school. But Karen Lewis says no, and Karen Lewis told us she bent Chewy's elbow to run. So is Karen Lewis running Chewy's campaign? Is she like a puppeteer? Is she like a marionette sort of up there just, and she's doing the same thing with Fioretti, who didn't get the blessing of Karen Lewis, but he would like it. And so Rahm, again, I'm not endorsing Rahm, but Rahm at least is saying, these schools are failing, I'm trying to do something, I'm going to close them if they're underutilized, I'm going to close them if they're inefficient. It's sad, I know it's disruptive, but it's really disruptive to a kid's life to leave him in a school where he doesn't learn how to read, right? You got to give that to Rahm, at least he's doing something. Something. What do these guys, as Mayor Daley said, what trees do you plant, Mr. Fioretti, Alderman Fioretti? What trees do you plant, Commissioner Garcia? And we'll ask Willie Wilson when he shows up, what trees do you plant? I mean, you can't be to somebody with a nobody, and to become a somebody, you actually have to have a message. You actually have to have something specific. This is, you don't need a PhD in political science to figure this out. Okay, so kind of covered, well, we haven't covered, but we've touched on education. You got to do something to make it better. We touched on the troubles of dealing with the Chicago Teachers Union. Boy, Rahm found out about that one. We've troubled, violence. We've talked about that. And you see, Rahm every day. This is why he's going to have an easier time of it. If you haven't watched, he's holding press conferences. I think he's holding more than Bob and Chewy, and he gets the press to come because he actually says things. He actually takes questions from me and others. Really, raise my hand. He calls on me. He doesn't say, "Oh, and Jeff, you're going to be too tough." "Oh, Jeff, I can't do this." I mean, Chewy and Bob. I hate to say this, but if you want to challenge Rahm, you got to hold a press conference, and you don't get to pick who gets to ask questions. If you don't want Berkowitz asking about charter schools, well, don't run for mayor. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, right? Rahm, I got to say again, if Rahm were here, I would ask him as challenging as questions as I could, but at least he's doing something. So he holds a press conference recently, one of the better performing high schools. He talks about the importance of STEM. He's got a corporation donating money to STEM programs. He holds another press conference where corporations are donating money to facilitate dual enforcement, where kids at Kenwood High School could go to and have been enrolling in community colleges, so they get ahead, they pay for some of their higher education is paid for while they're in high school. They also get a jump. One of the kids I talked to was at the University of Chicago in this dual enrollment program. They get a sense, they get excitement, they get passion. Really, those are trees that Rahm has planted. I'm sorry, I keep sounding like a Rahm commercial. You know why? Because he has press conferences. They tell me when they are. I go to them. Sometimes we film, we ask questions, we report on. These guys can't even get a press release from Chewy. I mean, how can I even promote him if I don't get to see what he's doing? Or Bob, I can't get on their list. Really, they don't want, I don't know. Maybe it's just inadvertent. So, and we're ignoring Willie only because we're not going to go after him. He's still on the honeymoon because we haven't just invited him today. We hope he's here next week. If he stays away, we'll go after him. We don't know as much about him. He just hasn't been as involved. He needs to get his word out. Willie, you got to get specific things. Now, you've said you would break up Chicago into 4 regions. You would have a superintendent for each region. You've said something. I haven't seen you, but I've heard you said you'd take the police out of their cars and put them all on trains, or large numbers in trains. It's not going to work, okay? You've got to really start thinking about what you're saying, and you're just going to get panned. I don't know who that could be who could actually tell you how to develop a clean message, but if you're going to come on that show, we're going to ask you very specific questions here. I'm telling you before, we're not going to, we'll be very fair, but you need specific things to communicate to people that, they should vote for you, all right? So jobs, we haven't focused on a lot. I mean, Illinois has a very high unemployment rate. Chicago's a big part of Illinois. They're 36 out of 50 states. I don't know what the rate is in Chicago. The Tribune and the Sun-Times, one of those was carrying an article just the other day about how Chicago's lagging many other major cities. I mean, Rahm, are you talking about that? Because whenever there's a new headquarters, and look, Chris Roebling, a Republican stalwart, came on this show and said he gave Rahm credit for, he says it seems like Rahm's spending every frickin' minute thinking about, if we can say that, frickin' minute, thinking about how to bring corporations here to get more jobs here. So Chuy, are you critical of that, and what would you do, Chuy Garcia, to bring more corporations here? Would you bring them to the inner city, or would you say that's the shiny city, I'm going to bring them to the neighborhoods? Because usually the bigger companies migrate toward the city. There's some that will go out to the neighborhoods. Fioretti, what would you do? I mean, you've been an alderman for what, I don't know, 4 years, 8 years, seems like a long time. What have you done? Have you been out there? Can you tell us the list of companies you brought? Could you tell us the committees you formed to do that? Could you tell us what the unemployment rate would be in Chicago if you were mayor? Could you? I just, see, these questions just pop in. They just pop into my mind. You don't have to, what I'm looking at, folks, you look at just topics. I don't have any questions. Nobody hands me, there are some media here where when they go into an interview, somebody like hands them questions. You know how you can tell? Because they never ask a follow-up. They got really good questions. Half my shows are from watching other media do interviews, and then I just ask all the questions they didn't ask as follow-ups, you know. So they had good starters. So if you don't write your own, if you don't have topics and just speak sort of spontaneously and ask questions, you're not going to be able to ask follow-ups. This is a terrible conversation because I don't have anybody here to converse with. You know, it's not my ideal. Hopefully next week we'll have Willie Wilson there. We've invited maybe Paul Green from the Roosevelt University, professor of political science, knows more practical economics and theory and everything about Chicago than any man, woman, or child alive. I'd like to have Paul Green here. We'd like to have State Rep David Harris, who says he's just a minnow. But look, from little minnows to big minnows come. The state legislature is made up of minnows. So we've had Lawrence Massal here on state issues. We've had John Tillman here. We've had Andy Shaw, a very diverse group. David Harris, you're there. You're a legislator. Come. So that's hopefully our lineup. We can see we're getting somebody on state issues, somebody on city issues, a pundit, much preferred. People think I want to talk for half an hour. Oh, I so do not want to do that. Okay. So on jobs, what's the big thing they were talking about? The city council, okay, Rahm says, here's my solution. I'm going to raise the minimum wage. I'm going to help people with low income. How am I going to do it? Well, the minimum wage is now $8.25. Nobody can get by. I'm going to do it to $13. Doesn't tell you even, it's not even a good idea, but still he might have told you. By 2019, it's 2015. What did he do when he came in 2011? If you believe in minimum wages and you believe it, why didn't he do it in 2011? And Rahm, why not stop? Don't just make it 19. Don't make it $13 by 2019. Why don't you make it $40? Make it $100. Oh, because you know why? Because the law of supply and demand. As you raise the price of something, the law of demand says you get less of it. So there'll be less labor demanded. More on that another time, but none of these guys disagree. They all want to raise the minimum wage. Chuy does, Rahm does, Fioretti does, who knows, maybe Willie Wilson does. Where is the diversity? Where's the choice? Where are the people that, you know, you got some choice between Rahm and his competitors, some, but on employment, on minimum wages, it's like, it's all the same. Look, just remember, we're not going to do this again, hopefully, because hopefully these guys will come back on the show. 17 years, 840 shows, we do them with guests. Just had a tough week because just last night, Fioretti told me he's not going to be here. You know, when you find out your guest is not going to be there less than 24 hours, you know, can't imagine how many people I cajoled and bothered to try to get them. You can't get people on the last day. Aaron, Tony, guys, you know, Mr. Farrell, the guys running that, if you want to call it a campaign in the Fioretti office, you can't tell people, you know, like 12 hours before I won't be there. It's not a good thing to do. It does not reflect well on you, Mr. Fioretti, as the head of that campaign, okay? So, I think you've got plenty if you go to a cocktail party, if you're in the suburbs, you've got plenty to talk about for the mayoral campaign. You know who the candidates are. I've shown you who's likely to win. You know the key issues are education and crime. We haven't covered city finances. Nobody's got a solution there, so nobody's got a solution to the city pensions, but you know, you've got more than enough. I mean, and anyway, when you go to those cocktail parties, you really shouldn't be drinking much. It's not that good for you. I would ask for some healthy carrot juice. That's what I would. I'd get on that Michelle Obama kick. I'm with Michelle on that. You know, let's eat and drink healthy, okay? Because Barack, of course. The main thing for all these folks who stayed away, Barack Obama came on this show 6 times, and he became president of the United States. maybe there's a cause and effect there. Do you think? I mean, 6 times. 6 1/2 first hours, where Fioretti was afraid to sit. He didn't have time to get here. Brock came from the south side, from Hyde Park, an hour trip, and we were at that time, we're taping him one after. He sat in the chair. We went back and forth. He answered any questions. He didn't want to tell me certain questions couldn't be covered because he became President of the United States, Alderman Fioretti, Commissioner Chuy Garcia, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, your buddy, became President of the United States 6 times on public affairs. Rahm, I'll give you credit. You're here too. You got 4 more. You want to be President of the United States? I wouldn't tempt fate, Rahm. I would do 4 more public affairs shows, you know. And I'm helping you guys. I mean, I'm on the Community Advisory Board. You can look up, if you folks go to WTTW.com, go to their website, click on for About Us, and you'll see there's something called the Community Advisory Board. Click on that. You'll see there's a report, really good, from the Community Advisory Board. Goes to TTW. There's an individual statement, which just me, Jeff Berkowitz, 2 pages saying WTTW should have had 4 debates on their own, invited all the candidates, or at least all the top 4, and if whoever showed up, ditto. If 1 person showed up, 2, 4. 4 weekly programs, 1 hour on the Chicago mayoral election. You know, I'd do it. If I were there, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't, nobody has to write my questions, nobody has to do that. You know, Phil, you can take the night off. Carol, you can take the night off. Eddie Russo, you can take the night off. You know, everybody else, just chill. Because Berkowitz is here to do 4 debates. With you 4 guys, you should thank me. At least Chuy should. Bob would. You want debates. Willie, I don't know if Rahm. So, it's not an endorsement. It's not a promo for Berkowitz. But it is saying that's what Chicago should be about. This is what Chicago's about. Get the issues discussed, get the alternative answers out there. Okay, I'm just going to cut it right here. Just remember this. Come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.